Hi, personal finance class. We're going to work with section 13.2 today, which deals with income tax liability. And tax liability is the total tax due for the year. Okay, that is the official amount that you owe the federal government. Now, this lesson is a continuation from yesterday's lesson, which was 13.1. And if you remember, in 13.1, we had this calculation of taxable income. Okay, and it listed the 1 through 6 totals here. Our lesson today picks up after 1 through 6, and now we continue on with our tax liability, and it goes all the way through point 10. Okay, so it seems kind of like we're halfway through the section, and it's because we are here. Okay, so calculation of our additional tax owed and refund due. Like I said, this is the list that I showed you on page 492 in your textbook. Okay, this is the continuation. You have this in your notes that I gave to you after spring break, so you can keep this out to help you work through so you don't have to do so much turning of pages, because we're going to do a lot today for this. Okay, the big thing you need to know is we're going to be using pages in the back of the book here on page 576. Page 576 is way back in the back of the book, and it's our tax tables. Okay, it's actually a number of pages here. It goes from 576 all the way through 583. And what this is our different income amounts. So this would be $67,000 if your taxable income was $67,000. And I believe that was the highest total. Yes. And the first beginning page starts below $1,000 here. Okay. So you're going to have to flip through these different taxable tables to help you find the totals that we're going to need for this section. So you're going to have to put papers in different pages to help you flip back and forth, because it can get a little busy here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look right at an example here. Okay, we're going to continue on with Mr. Goldberg here. Okay, he is the gentleman that we are using for our examples in 13.1, and we're going to actually use the totals that we found from 13.1 to continue on. So Mr. Goldberg's tax liability is based on his taxable income of $28,770, and that's actually what we found in one of the problems in section 13.1. Remember, Mr. Goldberg is a married man with 3 children. Okay, he and his wife have 3 children. So he is filing jointly again. Okay, so the very first thing for this problem, for us to find his tax liability, is that we've got to look in this table. Okay, so here we go, flipping back to the back of the book. We are going to look for his income of $28,770. Okay, so turning in our page, we've got to look at these numbers here. This is our thousands amount. So we're looking for 28,000. Okay, so we're looking at 28,770. Okay, which is right here, very small print. Okay, now it said he was filing jointly. If we go to this first column over here and follow it all the way up to the top here, you see this is for singled. The second row after his income says married filing jointly. That is the column that we want. So we're going to go all the way down here to where our income is, and we see that his tax should be $3,616. And we got that from looking in our table. Okay, so $3,616, that came from the table. Now, the next thing I need to check is to see if he has any tax credits. And it does not mention any of that, so I don't need to subtract anything. And so I know that his final tax is $3,616. Okay, so it was just as simple as that, as using our back of the textbook to find that answer. Okay, let's keep going on to another problem here. Problem number 2, okay, says find the amount of tax owed or refund if Mr. Goldberg's federal withholding is 4,389, and then they're going to give us a second problem here so that we can see the difference between the two. And so the second one is if his federal withholding was $3,491. Now we're going to go through working through that table that is on page 492. We're working through those steps, remember. And step 9 says that we're supposed to find the withholding by subtracting the tax due. Okay, so this is what our federal government has taken out. Okay, and now by looking at the back of the book, remember we found that total was 3,616. We're going to subtract. This is the actual amount that we should be taking out. This is what the government actually took out. So we're going to subtract the two, and we find that there's a difference of $773. That is going to actually be a refund because the federal government took out more money than what it needed to. Now, that was with 4,389. Let's do example B over here. Example B says they took the federal withholding was 3,491. Okay, now if you notice, what we found in the back of the book was actually higher. Okay, this is the official amount that the federal government wants from us. Out of our paycheck in that, they only took the 3,491. So once I subtract it, I find the difference of 125. This is the amount of money that I have to owe, Mr. Goldberg has to owe to the federal government to get it to be 3,616. So in this scenario, he owes $125. Okay. So now we're going to move on to this thing called itemized deductions. And itemized deductions, in the last section we talked about a straight line deduction. Okay, it was a nice simple amount that we would get. In fact, it was $9,500. And if you remember this chart on page 489 here, standard deductions, this is what we used on our last lesson. And remember, if they were married filing jointly, it was $9,500. Well, sometimes you actually might have more deductions from different things that you have in your life for the year that might be more than the standard deduction. So you don't necessarily have to take that standard deduction. You can use the amount of deductions that you are going to claim. But remember, you always have to have receipts to prove this. Okay, so we're going to look here at Mr. Goldberg's situation here. Okay, and we're going to decide, should he do the standard deductions or should he itemize them? And so here is my list of different items throughout the year that he contributed to, that he can claim as deductions. And so to determine whether he should or not, the very first thing we need to do is add them together. If that total, when I add them together, is over $9,500, which is that standardized deduction, he should then itemize it. If it is under that $9,500, it would be better for us to just claim that $9,500. So once we add up all these totals, the $1,750 and all these totals, once we get the grand total, we find that it's $14,403. That is more than the standard deduction. So Mr. Goldberg in this case should go ahead and itemize his deductions, but he's got to make sure he has those receipts. Okay, and so that is what it's talking about in that section. Okay, example 4 here says, okay, we found that he's going to use his itemized deduction. We're now going to find out what his taxable income should be. And from his taxable income here, I'll show you the problem. We're going to subtract a few things. So in section 13.1, working through the table, we found his adjusted gross income. Okay, and so this was carried over from the last lesson. We just found that his itemized deductions were $14,403. And then he has his exemptions. Remember, you can claim the exemption of you, yourself, your wife, and any children that you might have. And each of them, our book says, is going to have a total of $3,050. Okay, so this is where this $15,250 came by multiplying 5 times that $3,050. So these are all his exemption and deductions that he can claim. Those are going to get subtracted from his adjusted gross income to give us his total taxable income here. This is that total we're then going to use to go to the back of the book. And that is what we're doing here, okay? So we want to determine how much Mr. Goldberg's federal tax liability is. So go to the back of the book. So back to that page. I'm not going to actually flip back to it because I've already done it in advance. So to save things, remember we have his taxable income, which we just found. That's what we were trying to find. And he's filing jointly. And so we flip to the back of the book, look in the table for where his income falls in. You're looking under the $23,000. And you find it, go across the table to where it says married filing jointly, and you find that his federal tax liability is $2,881. That is how much is owed to the federal government, okay? Now, from there, we go on to problem number 6 to see, does Mr. Goldberg actually have to owe money to the federal government, or does he get a refund? So what we're going to do is just like the last problem here, they're giving us 2 options. Okay, so let's say in one circumstance here, case A, Mr. Goldberg actually had $3,533 taken out of his paycheck in taxes for the year. Okay, and in the second case here, he only had $2,816 taken out. So what we're going to do is find that difference between what the federal tax liability said we have to pay the government versus what was taken out. So if you notice in the first case here, once I subtracted it, find the difference, the government actually took out too much money. And so in this case, case A, Mr. Goldberg's going to actually get a refund. Here in part B, and not enough money was taken out, so he owes $65 to the federal government once we find the difference. Okay, so that's basically how we work through the table. There's one little tiny thing that we need to take note of, okay? And so there's this thing called the tax credit, okay? Tax credit is something that directly reduces the amount of taxes due. Okay, so basically we get to this federal tax liability part here. Okay, and with that tax credit, we can subtract that total from our liability. Okay, and what could cause that? Well, any child support or any dependent care, say you have an elderly relative living in your house that you have to take care of, or any expenses, those can come out as a taxable credit, okay? And so that comes directly off your federal tax liability, okay? So that is one other thing that we're going to use for this section. Okay, guys, we have made it to the end of this section here. Carefully go ahead and do your assignment. If you get stuck, go back and look at your examples, and then email and text me if you have any other problems. Have a good day.